Hi everybody, it's Wednesday, and just as I was about to start Twitch yesterday, Kotaku started trending online. And then people started sending me direct messages, and I was like, what is going on? And it took me about 15 minutes while I was waiting for my internet to improve, and then talking to some people during the Twitch stream where we finished Abduction, and I was kind of a jerk about not playing into the drama of the ending. I was like, the Green Valley! And stuff. And joking about farts, because we'd had a whole discussion about Blazing Saddles. If you like this kind of sober commentary, become a patron, because it happens there too. Patreon. You should become a member. Patreon.com/AnnaK. The other great thing about Patreon is, unless you are a complete edgelord, you don't have to worry about sponsors dropping you for saying the wrong thing. It's all up to the audience and what you guys want to watch. And what I found, at least for me, you guys are more interested in sort of cultural issues related to game stuff and kind of predictions and insider stuff, which I'm trying to do more of. The thing is, there's not that kind of news every day. And that's what sort of led to the decay in quality in a lot of games writing, is that churn, that sort of, and so the day started with Kotaku doing some pretty decent reporting today. I was reading about how Blizzard lost a sponsor over their treatment of Blitzchung. Not a Chinese sponsor, a Taiwanese part of a Japanese business, specifically Mitsubishi. So they reported on that. They were pissed off about the harsh treatment Blitzchung received, and so they dropped their sponsorship of the various esports programs they sponsor. And then there were coverage of a lot of pushbacks of games. Notably, The Last of Us 2 freaking called it. Do you guys remember when they announced the release date at E3? I'm like, it's Naughty Dog. There's no way. And I actually think this release date is better because it is the time of year. It's May 29th, 2020. And I actually think this release date is better because it's the same time of year that the original Last of Us came out. There's usually not very much going on at that time. It's sort of pre-E3, but it's a good time to release a game. That's when the original Last of Us came out. That's when we all sort of discovered it, or people can sort of discover it over the summer kind of thing, because people don't go outside anymore. Other games that were delayed include, I believe, Watch Dogs Legion, no surprise. And a bunch of Ubisoft titles, Rainbow Six Quarantine, Gods and Monsters. They're saying release fiscal 2020, 2021. Ghosts of Tsushima doesn't have a public release date, but Kotaku also reported that it's being bumped. This is decent stuff. Stuff about the Fallout. That's kind of older. The Last of Us 2 news is a bit old, but this is what I was reading on Kotaku earlier today. I'm just seeing the dates. That came on October 24th. And then all of a sudden, yesterday, there was a thing about autoplay ads. And didn't think much about that. But then 11 hours before I finished Twitch, Jason Schreier posted a GMG Union badge on his Twitter feed. I'll show you guys that here. Hang on. There we are. I'll show you. This is when things started to get a little strange. Here we go. There's the GM Union. And then a Deadspin editor said, hey, I've just been fired from Deadspin for not sticking to sports. And then a GMG Union indicator that they're going to fight the firing. And then Jason Schreier puts up, I don't know what's going to happen next, but to everyone who has read and supported our work at Kotaku over the years, Thank you, which sounds kind of like either quitting or being fired, right? And then another day at the office from Stephen Totillo. I've steered Kotaku through another tough day at the office. Sorry, I've steered Kotaku through some rough waters before thanks to my amazing team. Can I do it again? We'll see. We all love the site, the family of sites we're in, and are extremely motivated to do right by our readers and viewers. And then they're saying Kotaku's not dead. And then it's his pinned tweet about a book from like over a year ago. So that caused Kotaku to trend based on the idea that Deadspin wasn't the only, GO site. Now you remember that Kotaku, Deadspin, etc. used to be Gawker-owned sites, and Gawker had some very dubious reporting practices, stalking celebrities and publishing smear pieces and whatnot. So the assumption was that all of the Deadspin, all of the GO family, I think they were owned by Univision and then they sold to a private equity firm. But all these sites that were owned by this conglomerate got stay in your lane messages. And apparently, from what I've read, Deadspin revolted. The Washington Post reported that Deadspin revolted, and I'll show you here. They basically shitposted on their own site, saying that, here we go. So Geo Media also publishes Lifehacker, Kotaku, The Onion, and other sites. The Onion is not going to have a problem with this. Non-sports stories were pinned to the top of Deadspin's homepage in apparent response to this memo that said stick to sports. It says, a staff memo from Paul Maidment, the editorial director of G&O Media, Deadspin's parent company. Maidment wrote that creating great sports journalism would be the site's sole focus, and that Deadspin would write only about sports and that which is relevant to sports in some way. This is what led to the uprising based on some sort of journalistic ethics. And Kotaku has not been very nice to me. I will fully admit that. This idea that they do high quality journalism, I think, is a bit of a feint. Jason Schreier has done some very good reporting. He can also be a real jerk, but one thing has nothing to do with the other. A lot of good reporters are jerks, and some aren't. You don't need to be a jerk to be a good reporter. But this stay in your lane mandate that they're rebelling against, this doesn't make any sense to me. Basically, the suggestion is that they're not going to be able to do politically charged op-eds anymore. And I don't think that's necessarily so for Kotaku. I think it's actually better for business if they go easier on some of the hot takes, just personally. There are ways to critique a game without being quite so inflammatory, but the issues facing sports and sports advertisers are not the same as a video game site. There's a general consensus, and this is where things get very interesting. There's a general consensus that people go to sports to get away from politics. Obviously, those lines got blurred with the Colin Kaepernick stuff, with some other things like, the stuff about Hong Kong and the NBA exhibition game. But those get covered by sports sites. Those are sports related. Deadspin had a tendency to go way away from sports. I didn't even know Deadspin was a sports site for the longest time. Move over to Kotaku. I'm not sure, because they're being coy about it. Oh, it's a rough day, but they don't actually say why. We don't actually know what their change in mandate is. Having worked in music programming, it was even more severe when I worked in music programming. Playing music was a condition of license for much music back in the day. We couldn't just decide we weren't going to do things that weren't music focused. The CRTC, the Canadian Radio and Television Communications Organization, could take away the station's license if they didn't stay on mandate, because that was what their license was based on. And so this is a bit odd to me. This seems like some false bravado. You're video game reporters. Why do you have a problem writing about things directly connected to video games? It doesn't mean you can't deal with an issue in video games. It just means you can't create an issue. And this is so ironic based on the video I made just yesterday, not knowing any of this stuff was going on. I decided to kind of like, what's going on? Oh, Last of Us 2 was delayed. Obviously, I was late to the party on that stuff, but now all of a sudden, wham, what? I don't see the issue here. If you're, like, we need to divide it into news and op-ed. Obviously, those are different things. You have to pad a video game site with op-ed a lot. First of all, there's two things people care about a gaming site: rumors and opinion. Those are the things that get read. News doesn't tend to get read a lot because everybody's covering the same news. Everybody. So, okay, people go to Kotaku and Polygon first, maybe IGN. Nobody else can cut through because of search engine and stuff. But everybody publishes the same news. So the opinions, and yes, the rumors or the gossip, are the things that drive traffic because those get concentrated. Those don't get spread out into hundreds of sites. Now the op-ed, you can write good op-ed and not pick at scabs. You can write a piece that is very thought-provoking without attacking people. And if Kotaku has so lost that skill because for so many years Gawker did not care because they would just clickbait the crap out of it, well, you're going to have to learn. That's what happens when companies buy your publication. I am not seeing an argument based on commitment to hard journalism here. I'm not. I'm seeing, oh, you don't like our ads, complain to our parent company, and how dare you tell us that a video game website is video game journalist to only write about video games? I don't see the problem here. Maybe I'm being naive. Because, I mean, I don't do video game discussions all the time, but I need to find topics that appeal to gamers, or you guys won't watch. The problem solves itself, right? Like, if you're not interested, it's like, oh, that video didn't do as well. Don't write that again. And heaven forbid, Kotaku might actually start having to cover, say, people who do informative series about video games who aren't Anita Sarkeesian, or some cool little indie game that isn't getting any press attention. Or how about the 30th anniversary of Quest for Frickin' Glory that nobody but me and like one other site covered? Like, heaven forbid you actually have to report on video games instead of generating cheap hot take content that isn't really based on anything factual. It's just feels and lashing out. Heaven forbid. I don't really get the problem. Like, you don't see anybody at The Onion complaining that just keep writing fake news, stay in your lane, because The Onion didn't drift, right? The Onion didn't all of a sudden start reporting actual news stories and going, ha, punked. There's nothing wrong with a parent company going, we are selling ads based on video game coverage. It makes it more difficult for us to sell ads based on video game coverage when you're not actually writing about video games. That is a total, bless you, Momo, that is a totally fair thing for management of a website to say. I don't get this. It almost seems like Kotaku has existed with very little editorial control because, one might think that direct editorial at Kotaku would be guys stick to games. Maybe with a side of, comics and anime, depending on what the mandate is. Now, I personally think that sites, there should be more leeway because, say, somebody's a big Batman fan, they're not only going to play video games, they're also interested in movies and comics and all this stuff. I mean, Polygon does some of that, right? They have movies, it's basically geek stuff. But now with the way things like iTunes have reorganized, there is no general geek category. You have to pick whether you're going to do video games, or you're going to do film and television, or you're going to do books and culture or something like that. It's stupid. There's no catch-all for video games, comics, and movies, which a property like Spider-Man or a property like Batman or Superman or Wonder Woman, it's a multimedia IP, right? Like it's an artificial thing to force it into one thing, but we don't control what Apple does. But I admit I do not get the uprising over stick to sports. This seems like people who, quite frankly, can't take criticism. And it's not even criticism. It's just, look, here's the mandate going forward. It happened all the time. There was a big fight over relevance on when I worked at Much Music that, one management regime wanted everything to be relevant because teenagers are sponges and want things that inform them as well as entertain them. That management regime left. A new one came in and it was like, screw relevance, be fun. All right, you pivot. So all of a sudden, relevance wasn't cool anymore and stupid stuff was. Relevance, quite frankly, worked better, even though nobody really appreciated it at the time. But this is what happens when you're in a for-profit business. It's not like back in the day where local news was a condition of license on television, where newspapers were sort of, people wanted to know what was going on in the world, but newspapers were still advertiser supported. Newspapers can't keep going just based on the subscription price. They need people to run ads. And so while I sympathize with these sites having to balance traffic and then keeping advertisers happy, if you're an advertiser-driven model and advertisers are complaining that, there's not enough core video game content, we want to sponsor video game content, not culture war stuff. We'll sponsor politics if we want that. And I say this as somebody who does this kind of stuff and who does political podcasting, and shocker, like, what did I just say on my own I was going to do? I was going to stop doing politics on this channel, and I was going to stick specifically to games because I do political stuff on a podcast, on FU Network. So I separated them. That's just the way things are going. And I really don't. First of all, I think it's unprofessional to troll your own site because you're mad about a management decision. There's a way of doing that as sort of an F the man kind of thing, but they overdid it at Deadspin. That was childish. Be a professional. You're getting paid to do this. Some days suck. Trust me, I've been doing this for a really long time. You see the face. Really long time. Secondly, don't post cryptic, I don't know what's going to come, but thank you for those of us who love our content. Knowing you've pissed a lot of people off, knowing you've alienated what should be your base audience, you should have known that people were going to go, yay, the same way that people at Kotaku and Polygon and stuff did when those of us at The Escapist got downsized. Yeah, I remember that. So this whole sorry to break it to you guys, Kotaku's not dead. What goes around comes around, and I have promised not to do that. I have promised not to sink to that level. I do not want anyone to lose their job. I want the management at Kotaku to get it together so people can keep their jobs. But what Kotaku should be doing is a mix of stuff that's actual news that isn't going to get a ton of clicks, but it is for the greater good. It is informing people. You do that stuff, those individual articles may not get a ton of clicks, but Kotaku will be known for stuff that you can actually discover interesting projects on instead of just having to go through like Twitch streams and Let's Plays and word of mouth. That's a big problem with big gaming sites like Polygon and Kotaku. They're not helping people discover anything until it already gets big. Now, the other thing, yeah, those op-eds are a part of the landscape. People do read them. People do care about them. And I get that search engine optimization rewards attacking people instead of attacking ideas, but there are ways of doing it. There are ways of referencing a current news story so that you can do the Google foo, but then pivot away. Don't just spend all that time criticizing a person. Talk about the actual issue at play here. Inform people. Because even good like op-ed, even good op-ed informs. You create a spine of your opinion based on facts. It's not just, this is what I feel and damn the facts. No, there has to be some factual underpinning to your opinion. And then, then you've got the news that, like, oh, the Blizzard losing the sponsor. But that's good reporting. Good for them for tracking that down. Good for the, investigative journalism that Kotaku does every so often. We don't expect that every day. No news service gets a big breaking story every single day. That's just not the way it works. Those things are expensive loss leaders that bring people into your site. But the problem I have is when I go to Kotaku, none of the stories terribly interest me. I go and it's all an increasingly narrow focus on Blizzard, Fortnite, clothing and lifestyle. Like, let's look at the front page of Kotaku so you guys can see what I'm doing. Okay, so we're gonna switch over here. Give me a minute. I'm gonna switch over. Here's the front page of Kotaku. Okay. Lonely Mountain, which is a biking game. Okay. EA. Okay. This is actually not the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order coverage has not been particularly in-depth. Terrible year, 2019 for Blizzard. Clothing and lifestyle. What does that have to do with video games? One again, EA cancels its NBA game. Okay, fine. That's news. There's the Blizzard story I was talking about. Featured videos, The Outer Worlds, the best things Xbox One has done this generation. GTA golfer fights, you're still doing GTA coverage? Okay. Modern Warfare's modern online crossplay helped me get the gang back together. I don't even know what that means. The maps are frustrating. The Division 2. This is all like extended. And finally, okay, Vampire's been out for a while, or Vampire, I don't know how it's pronounced, but something that I'm gaming deals, okay, but that's paid. But like now we're repeating. And what's this? What is this doing? These are women. What are these doing? They're attractive women. Why is this on Kotaku? But you get the point, eh? It's repetitive. There isn't a broad swath of interest on the page. There isn't something like a better curated site would have something from like fighting games or something from like, the anime style games and something from this and something for that. You don't see Destiny news very much at all anymore, which is really surprising because that community breaks the internet every time something new comes out. They're not actually creating a broad cross-section of interest. They are pounding those SEO winners like Blizzard, like nothing from Fortnite. You're doing it wrong, man. Kidding. But there just isn't that much of interest there. And why do we have fashion and clothing or lifestyle and clothing on a video game site? We're not actually exactly known for our fashion, except for the cosplayers. So Not that they listen to me. They pretend to know I don't exist, even though they do. But as somebody who's been there, as somebody who got a mandate check quite a few times, including while I was at The Escapist, and no, it wasn't what they claim, that it was, an alt-right. No. It was, make sure you can prove it. I got checked on definitions of free speech a lot. That the site would not allow me to talk about the greater concept of free speech. It was the legal definition of free speech was it only protects you from your government, that a corporate site does not have to publish anything it wants. It was, and I understand they're a corporate site. They're trying to protect its editorial control. So I got checked on that a lot. But that's the reality when you're getting paid to do this. It's almost like games journalism has been treated like a quasi-volunteer feel-good exercise for so long that places like Kotaku have forgotten that these are for-profit sites. You are getting paid. There is a mandate. When your boss tells you to do something, you can debate it, you can fight it, but you have to respect chain of command or quit. You can't just go rogue and not expect there to be consequences. I'll be watching to see what the union does with that editor's firing, because if you trash your own page, that's childish. Do what, MSNBC has been doing a great job on this Ronan Farrow dispute with NBC. They are reporting it like news. They are inquiring of their own parent company what they are doing as news gathering. They are not hiding from it because it makes NBC look bad in some ways. They are doing their jobs, and they're doing that very responsibly. There is a way for Deadspin and Kotaku to be holding their parent company more to account without seeming like children. And we all got to do it. That's part of the job. I ended up deciding I don't like it. I was getting stuff when I wrote some joke articles, like what Nintendo characters are most like the 2016 presidential hopefuls sort of thing, and Donald Trump was Bowser, and then they didn't get any of my other jokes. Jeb Bush is Luigi, because, he's the less famous brother, that kind of thing. But, it went to this editorial board, and they started rewriting my jokes and saying, I don't get it, and it was too invasive, and I said, you know what, forget it. I'm done. And that's the only thing you can really do. You can't go, I think I said Ted Cruz was King DDD, something like that. But, one of the things I got checked on, big alt-right breeding ground, was that I wasn't focusing enough on Hillary Clinton's historic first female presidential candidate, because it was a humor piece. It was not about that. It was about being goofy. But yeah, so this big, alt-right escapist told me I couldn't do what I wanted to do because it wasn't liberal or feminist enough. Me. Yeah. So I was just like, forget it. There's only so much rewriting a person can take. And you do have to stick to your guns. I didn't let Polygon rewrite me. I didn't let, I would only let so much of The Escapist do that. Kotaku has never published or covered anything I've done, so they're not a problem. But you have to decide what you're going to take as a freelancer. If you are an employee, you have to handle it in a way that is mature. And that means not airing your dirty laundry in public while you're still working for the company. There's just a certain level of professionalism here that people should expect. And stick to writing about video games should not be an offensive corporate mandate. I don't know. Is there something I'm missing here? Let me know. And so, I don't have to deal with advertisers like this. Patreon, you should become a member. Patreon, very, very special, exciting thing coming up tomorrow on Patreon. So become a patron now. You won't regret it. Thanks for watching.